This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Riley Laychuk. Janet is off tonight. Former Winnipeg Mayor Brian Bowman is weighing in on the proposed settlement of the city's lawsuits over its police headquarters. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, Bowman says the settlement only increases the need for a public inquiry.
Brian Bowman, the former mayor, led City Council's call for a public inquiry into the construction of Winnipeg's police headquarters and a series of real estate transactions flagged by audits nearly a decade ago. Bowman also pushed for lawsuits against people and companies involved in building the police HQ. A judge ruled last year that former CAO Phil Schigel accepted a bribe from contractor Armic Babakanians. Now, the city says Babakanians and the rest of the police HQ defendants are ready to settle for at least $21.5 million. Council is poised to approve the deal next week. Bowman won't weigh in on that decision, but he did make a statement. If the settlement is approved and a full court hearing does not proceed, the need for a public inquiry will be even greater. A public inquiry remains the most effective tool available to put facts on the public record to assist in further strengthening and improving processes and procedures at the City of Winnipeg. That's why a public inquiry should be called without further delay. During question period in the Manitoba legislature, NDP leader Wab Kinew asked Premier Heather Stephenson why she won't call an inquiry.
Now that the city has reached a settlement, there aren't any more excuses for the Premier to avoid calling a public inquiry.
The Premier responded.
There's parts of this that do remain before the courts now, and we will continue to allow that process to take place.
The courts have yet to rule on an appeal by former CEO Phil Schigel, who was ordered to pay the city more than $1 million for his role in the police HQ. That decision is expected this year. Regardless, a former Winnipegger who helped 2 whistleblowers come forward with information about the police HQ says after more than a decade, it might be too late for an inquiry.
I think we missed the boat on that, and we meaning 2 provincial governments that both refused to call an inquiry.
Craig says the settlement is bittersweet, but the public still has a right to know what happened.
This is arguably the biggest scandal in Winnipeg's history, and it cost everyday taxpayers a lot of money.
I also heard from Paul Thomas, a professor emeritus of political studies at the U of M. He says the value of an inquiry fades with the passage of time. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, people waiting for a bus in Winnipeg could soon be out in the cold. This is the last year of a project to build new heated bus shelters. And as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the city says it has no funding to build more after this year.
Out here in Amber Trails, there are no bus shelters. Public Works Committee Chair Janice Luke says many newer parts of the city lack transit infrastructure.
It's not pleasant. No, it's not pleasant because in my area, in a lot of the areas in Waverly West, there's not really any big trees either. So, it's very cold.
A 4-year project to build new heated bus shelters ends this year. Transit officials told the Public Works Committee yesterday they had to cut the number of shelters down from 55 to 35. As for unheated bus shelters, there is no money to build more of those either.
Part of the reason why the city can't add more bus shelters is because it can't keep up with repairs to the ones that it has. Most of the glass is missing from this bus shack on Portage Avenue, and the city says suppliers don't have materials to replace them.
The city estimates it's about 2 years behind on getting materials to build the shelters.
Because of vandalism, they're having to redesign the way the heaters are installed because they've been taken apart. So if they can't get the product, they can't get the product.
Transit advocates like Kyle Owens say the city needs to invest in things like bus shelters if it wants to attract more riders.
We're looking at new developments across the city where we have very, very low access to transit. And this city says, well, why should we expand bus shelters? Why should we expand routes? Nobody there uses transit. Well, it's because service is terrible. That's why nobody uses transit.
Some city councillors plan to push the city to require developers to build bus shelters in new neighbourhoods. The city plans to update those rules later this year. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Iranians in Winnipeg say they don't believe the announcement from the country's judiciary chief saying thousands of prisoners have been pardoned. The CBC's Joanne Roberts has the story.
On Monday, the Chief Justice of Iran announced the pardon for 22,000 people who were arrested in anti-government protests. The announcement came just before the Iranian celebrations of Shanbasuri and Nowruz, but Iranians in Winnipeg aren't feeling a sense of relief.
Well, it's just a bitter laughter, because we know that it's not true.
Saida Mirzai is from Iran and studying at the University of Manitoba. She says it's common for the government to issue pardons, then rearrest prisoners later.
Well, of course, these are not real pardons because the real pardon is releasing all the prisoners.
Protests in Iran and all around the world began after the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini last September. She was killed in custody after being arrested by the morality police for inadequately covering her hair. Mirzai says the pardons are meaningless because of the crackdown on protesters still happening today.
They already started to, again, calling some of those prisoners that have been pardoned.
When you've been pardoned, you can't be summoned for exact same charges. But so many people have been summoned again.
Aryan Aryanpour is the president of the Iranian community of Manitoba. He called the announcement outrageous and says he believes the pardons are an attempt to stop the ongoing protests.
The regime wants to show off with this so-called amnesty, but there is no amnesty.
In the last few months, demonstrations on the street have declined. Aryanpour says despite this, civil disobedience in the country is at an all-time high.
In cities all over the country, you will see people wearing no hijab.
Mirzai says the slowing of demonstrations doesn't mean people have stopped being angry. She says they're finding different ways to protest against the Islamic Republic.
The world is protecting them. The world is on their side.
There is no independent confirmation of the mass release of prisoners. In February, Iran had acknowledged tens of thousands had been detained in the protests. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Hundreds of educators are in Winnipeg for the Manitoba School Boards Association annual convention, and the hot topic is the new provincial budget. School divisions say the increased funding is not enough to cover rising costs. Emily Brass has the story.
From inflation to pandemic spending to immigration, school divisions say financial pressure is high and the latest provincial budget doesn't meet their needs.
It's not enough. It hasn't been enough for a while.
Louis Riel School Division Chair Sandy Nemeth says the student body is growing fast and funding hasn't kept up.
We have welcomed almost 550 new students, and I know River-East Transcona School Division, the number's closer to 800. And those are unprecedented numbers in terms of new students arriving after the school start date in September.
That start date is crucial. Manitoba School Boards Association President Alan Campbell says once the school year begins, the budget is locked in.
If you have a significant group of families move into the division, in the middle of October, for example, so pretty early in the school year, they don't actually get funding to support those students until the next school year.
We've had 250 Ukrainian refugees arrive. We're a major landing spot for immigration in Manitoba.
Seven Oaks Superintendent Brian O'Leary says his school division has to raise taxes to keep up. It's expecting 3% more students this fall, but is only getting about 2% more money from the province.
You can put off buying a school bus for a year. You can't put off buying it for year after year. You can put off buying computers for a year. You can't put it off year after year. And we've cut staff, and even this budget, I would say, is status quo minus a bit.
The minister doesn't understand the impact of something called the cumulative effect.
Education Minister Wayne Uasco is under fire for the new budget, which he calls the biggest increase in 25 years.
Funding education to more than the rate of inflation.
But school boards say they're still catching up from previous cuts. Some, like the Interlake School Division outside Winnipeg, are expanding class sizes. Louis Riel is stretching every dollar and dipping into its reserves.
We agreed to do it because to start cutting programs and services is a giant step backwards.
She says it's critical the growing number of newcomer students get the extra support they need. Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A proposed bill to establish licensing requirements for addiction treatment centres, including supervised consumption sites, remains under fire. Today at the Manitoba Legislature, the opposition NDP grilled the Progressive Conservative government on the issue during question period. And as CBC's Josh Crabb reports, there's concern that bill could create barriers.
The bill, introduced by Mental Health Minister Janice Morley-Lecomte, would create safeguards and standards of care for supervised consumption sites. Critics and one organization already offering overdose prevention feel it would only create barriers. The head of Sunshine House, Levi Foy, says the group wasn't consulted. It runs a mobile overdose prevention site out of an RV. The site has had around 4,600 visits since opening last November, with approval from the federal government. Morley-Lecomte says the government did seek input on the bill.
I'm not quite sure if individuals with lived experience, individuals who work through addiction service organizations, clinical experts, shared health, regional health are not considered experts, but they were all part of the panel who helped make the standard.
A private member's bill in the Manitoba Legislature to make Orange Shirt Day a provincial statutory holiday passed second reading, but that doesn't mean anything will change here in Manitoba.
This should be something that we want to proceed and move forward in reconciliation for all of us.
The bill, which was introduced by NDP MLA Ian Bushy, would still have to pass third reading and be given royal assent. Government House Leader Kelvin Gertsen says supporting the bill during second reading shows the government supports the idea in principle, but the details still need to be debated.
There needs to be significant recognition, and we've undertaken that. The method and the mode of that recognition is still obviously being discussed by people not just in this building, but outside of this building as well.
Gertsen acknowledged the government is working on a bill of its own, but wouldn't say when it will be introduced. Earlier in the day, Seniors and Long-Term Care Minister Scott Johnston announced new money aimed at helping seniors age in their communities. 6 programs are getting a share of nearly $4.5 million. The government is chipping in $25,000 to support 3 additional age-friendly hubs across the province. There's also money to start exploring the concept of dementia-friendly communities. The Support Services to Seniors program is getting the bulk of the money, with an additional $2.9 million annually being added to help seniors live independently.
Providing and instead helping seniors be healthy, active, and connected to others.
The government is also putting $600,000 towards emergency response information kits that contain information that can be placed on a fridge door. That way, first responders would have access to essential healthcare information in case of an emergency. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba government has proclaimed today, March the 16th, as Human Trafficking Awareness Day. This morning at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, the province announced $1.5 million in funding for Velma's House, a 24-hour safe space for women who are experiencing domestic violence and sexual exploitation. CBC's Nempande Londe reports.
Velma's House provides women with a safe space to fulfill basic needs and access to longer-term supports. In their first year, they hoped to reach 850 people, but ended up with 11,000 visits. Wendy Burke was one of them.
I went there for support and other resources that I use also in the community, and I felt very safe, loved and supported, and I wasn't judged.
I'm incredibly pleased to announce today that the Government of Manitoba will be providing $1.53 million to support Velma's House at Laychuk.
Status of Women Minister Rochelle Squires announced the new money Thursday. Executive Director Dodie Jordan and House Manager Amy Graham say it will let them focus more on programming instead of fundraising.
My gratitude when Minister Squires was talking, me and Amy were like, I think I'm going to cry when Minister said how much money that's coming towards Velma's House.
Wendy Burke is now a part of the Lived Experience Advisory Committee at Velma's House. Jordan says the committee raised a concern that while all women are at a higher risk for sexual exploitation, Indigenous women are specifically being targeted by traffickers.
They're told Canada doesn't care about their Indigenous women, so target them. They won't look for them. They won't do the work that needs to happen to protect them. And so the opportunity is greater if you target Indigenous women.
Jordan says all of their services at Velma's House are informed by survivors and Indigenous ways of being and doing. They offer land-based teachings and incorporate Inuit and Métis language and culture.
What our knowledge keepers are teaching us is that culture is prevention and intervention. Understanding who we are as Indigenous people is part of that.
Jordan says the funding will allow Velma's House to help 3 times as many people. And as they grow, they hope to create a clinic space for basic health services. Nampande Lande, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist John Sauder is with us, looking at bright sunshine behind us this afternoon. You know, we really haven't had a lot of big snowstorms here in the south. I know the north has seen a lot of snow.
Yeah,
but not here.
Especially this week, right?
Yeah.
Like Thompson's picked up probably well over 30 centimeters just this week. But I've got some numbers here that talk about snow so far. So this is really up to March 14th. So far this season, we've had 85.4 centimeters. That's 20 centimeters below the normal snowfall that we would normally get up to this point in the season. That would be at 104.5. And then you think about last year, and a lot of people thinking, gee, you know, that snowbank in the front yard is pretty big. So it's kind of surprising numbers. Last year, up to this point, we had 154 centimeters. So as we all know, there was even more after that. This is about the time of year when the Colorado lows started to kick in, one after another. We're at minus 12. We did get to about minus 8.7. That's the highest number I saw on the hour earlier this afternoon out at the Winnipeg airport, and my forecast high was minus 8, but then we just hovered around minus 9 and then minus 10, and it's been dropping by a degree each hour. And then the sun shows up and the temperature continues to drop. Winds are still gusting out of the northwest at 44. Last hour, almost 50 kilometers per hour. And I got to tell you, tomorrow's going to be a similar day with very strong winds on into the afternoon. So satellite radar showing us, the satellite showing us the cloud cover kind of clearing out of the Winnipeg area, kind of a partly cloudy sky as we head into the evening and overnight period. And all of this cloud up to the north is still giving some snow from Lynn Lake down through Thompson into Island Lake. That will end tomorrow and look much better. Then as we go to the east, we're seeing some accumulating snow in northwestern Ontario. I'll show you how much in a second. So lots of cloud around on Friday. It builds back in from the north into the south, and we're going to see these little spots of snow. So periods of light snow as we head through the day. And you can see the wind arrows, those arrows that are moving, that is wind. And on into the afternoon, even right through the Red River Valley, gets very windy. Then high pressure is moving in from the west and clearing us out as we get into Saturday and the rest of the weekend. So it is going to be a lot brighter this weekend. Eventually, it will get warmer. 24-hour snowfall. I know this says 48, but I changed the time to 28. Might get about 3 centimeters here in Winnipeg between now and supper time tomorrow, but the amounts out to the east of Kenora are much, much higher. Dryden, Sioux Lookout. And look at these winds on into the late day Friday. So this is 3:30 in the afternoon. Southern Red River Valley, 65 to 70 kilometer per hour gusts. So it is going to be blowing and drifting snow again tomorrow, depending on how much loose snow we have around and how much new snow we're going to get. Even in the morning, winds are at 30 to 50. I have us 40 to 60 in the afternoon. So blowing snow will be outside the city in outlying areas and a high of only minus 10. Sunnier, yes, on the weekend. Still cool Saturday, but we warm up to minus 2 on Sunday.
Thanks, John.
You bet, Riley. No problem.
Well, if downtown Winnipeg's in your travels, you may have noticed their bright fluorescent green toques or baseball hats that the Downtown Community Safety Partnership folks wear. It is teams patrolling the downtown to help people who are in need of assistance, whether it's a safe walk home or helping connect people with the resources they need. The demand for the 24/7 nonprofit has skyrocketed since they first launched in 2020. For more, we have reached Matt Sans-Cartier, the Director of Operations and Intelligence for the Downtown Community Safety Partnership. First, I want to ask you, how does your organization help to make the downtown area more safe?
Right. So our mission and our vision is to help everyone downtown. And everyone downtown includes people who might be coming downtown to enjoy a hockey game, people who work downtown, people who live downtown, people who are passing through downtown, that are there for any reason. And so we have we take a multifaceted approach. Our organization offers things like 24/7 mobile patrol, both on foot and in vans, as well as long-term case supports, basically being that vital first point of contact for folks. Again, anyone that needs help, whether it's directions, which bus should I take, or somebody who needs more intense support by way of finding housing, detox, health services, and so on. And so we offer what we like to call a continuum of care in terms of getting people where they need to be, and sort of meeting them where they're at, to try to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe when in the downtown area.
How has demand for your services changed since your launch?
Yeah, so in 2020, when we started operations, a lot of it was, us finding work out there, and certainly there's no shortage of it. We've gone from being an organization in 2020 that has to basically make a lot of work for ourselves to, in 2022, being an organization where that work is being provided to us from the community. So people who live down here call us more, local groups, churches, agencies, so on and so forth. Anyone that wants to provide a wellness check for someone who may not feel comfortable calling, say, emergency services, they're able to call us instead. And we have collaborated with a lot of groups. To give you sort of a brief metric, our inbound requests for service in the community have gone from about 500 during the 2021 calendar year to a little over 2,700 in 2022. So it's about a 430% jump. And again, that's really, it comes down to building those community relationships, collaborating with our partners, and just kind of making sure that people know that we're there to help and that they feel comfortable reaching out to us, regardless of who they are or what they need.
That sort of leads me to my next question. Why is it important, I guess, to have another option aside from police or emergency services for someone who maybe just needs to be connected to resources?
Yeah, so I think there's a few options, there's a few different ways to answer that. Our main goal in working with our partners at the Winnipeg Police Service, as well as the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, is to make sure that basically dispatching the appropriate resource to this specific incident. So if someone who works downtown sees somebody sleeping on a sidewalk and it's really cold outside, they're able to call us instead of 911. And basically what that means is our goal is to reduce the strain on emergency services, to reduce the amount of time that police or paramedics, for example, are doing wellness checks so that they can get to the calls they need to get to save lives, to deal with incidents involving violence, and so on. So we're definitely not emergency services, but we do want to help alleviate that strain and to make sure that sort of 911 doesn't become the default service, because they have a lot on their plate as well. And so we're here to kind of provide that proactive presence to try to kind of intervene in crises before they get to the point of crisis, and to kind of offer folks that other option so that, they don't, people might get nervous calling. They're like, maybe I shouldn't, should I not call the police for this? So you can always call us. And if we're not the right agency to call, we'll definitely connect you with the agency that is right to call.
Right. Matt Sanz-Cartier with the Downtown Community Safety Partnership, thank you for your time tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Up the latest on two police officers who were shot and killed in Edmonton while responding to a call this morning. The suspect in the shooting, who is also dead, was 16 years old. More after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Edmonton is a city in mourning after 2 police officers were shot to death in the line of duty early this morning. The officers were killed after responding to a family dispute call. The male suspect in the shooting, who is also dead, was 16 years old. And a woman who was injured and taken to hospital is his mother. Travis McEwen reports.
Broken glass and a massive police presence signify the severity of the situation. Edmonton police officers were called to a family dispute at this apartment complex just after midnight. When 2 officers approached the suite, they were shot by a male suspect, shocking nearby residents.
I think I went to bed about 12 midnight and I heard a hot gunshot. I was scared. I thought it's like a fireworks.
Edmonton police say the officers didn't get a chance to discharge their firearms. They were rushed to hospital by colleagues who did everything they could to save their lives. Unfortunately, they were declared dead. The 2 officers are being identified as 35-year-old Constable Travis Jordan, who'd been with the force for 8 years, and 30-year-old Constable Brett Ryan, who had 5 years of service.
Constables Jordan and Ryan were valued members of our EPS family, and they work side by side with us every day in service to our community, and I can't tell you how devastated we are with their loss. And their lives and sacrifice will not be forgotten.
The young male suspect is also dead. Investigators believe he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It's been almost 8 years since an Edmonton police officer was killed in the line of duty. Constable Daniel Woodall was shot while attempting a criminal harassment arrest.
So I ask all Edmontonians, when you see an officer working to keep you safe and our community safe, please thank them for their service.
This is unthinkable, it's unimaginable, it's horrific, it's a tragedy, but we will move on because that's what we do.
And the impact of this tragedy expands far beyond Edmonton.
It's a loss that's felt throughout the province and I'm sure throughout our country and definitely with our membership. Mostly with our members in Edmonton, but definitely in Calgary, in Medicine Hat, in Lethbridge, across our province.
As they struggle to come to terms with their own grief, the investigation is ongoing, looking into why the officers were killed and what happened before they arrived. Travis McEwen, CBC News, Edmonton.
The Premier of Quebec visited the grieving town of Amqui today and committed to improving the province's mental health services. Francois Legault made the comments after a deadly crash on Monday left 2 pedestrians dead and 9 injured.
I think it's important also to tell the people who may have some difficulties to ask for help. And help is available. It's available right now, right here.
Legault says the tragedy made him consider what more the government could do for people who need help. A 38-year-old man faces 2 counts of dangerous driving causing death. Police allege the driver deliberately drove into a random group of pedestrians, including several children. UN investigators are accusing Russian forces in Ukraine of war crimes. It came in the UN inquiry's report. The allegations in that report are chilling, and the investigators say some may amount to crimes against humanity. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe has the story.
A tragic anniversary marked with candles. 1 year ago, this Mariupol theater was used by civilians as a shelter, clearly marked with the Russian word for children. Russia bombed it, killing as many as 600 people. A war crime, UN investigators say, one of a long list revealed in a report today.
Willful killings, torture, inhuman treatment, unlawful confinement, rape, as well as unlawful transfer and deportation.
The report is based on satellite images, hundreds of interviews, and visits to burial and detention sites. Investigators have compiled a list of Russians they believe responsible, but it's not public.
The suffering that this creates is absolutely immense, and the violations are of such magnitude, of such systematicity, that they certainly deserve accountability.
The UN conclusions come as reports this week suggest the International Criminal Court will open 2 cases against Russians, one for targeting infrastructure and one for abducting children.
This is the biggest test of the international justice system, really, since Nuremberg.
This veteran war crimes prosecutor says the challenge will be holding leadership accountable.
Not just the foot soldiers who we've seen on trial so far. Will we be able to go up the chain of command? Will we be able to show that military commanders, that political leaders ordered crimes?
UN investigators stopped short of calling the atrocities committed in Ukraine genocide, but said they would continue to gather evidence in that area. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, London.
The controversy continues around U.S. accusations that a Russian warplane hit a U.S. drone Tuesday over the Black Sea. Russia acknowledges the incident but denies any collision. Today, though, the Pentagon released video. It ends showing the drone's propeller apparently damaged. 2 encounters led up to it. A Russian fighter dumps what U.S. officials say was jet fuel. Then a second pass approaches very closely, with the video stopping when Pentagon officials say the crash happened. French President Emmanuel Macron today invoked a rarely used power to force a controversial pension bill through Parliament. Political opponents bellowed the national anthem in protest as Macron used a constitutional loophole to bypass Parliament and avoid a risky vote. The move clears the way for France to downgrade old-age pensions, including raising the age of eligibility from 62 to 64 years old. Public protests against the reforms have paralyzed parts of the country for months now, but Macron may not be able to avoid the next vote. The opposition is already calling for a no-confidence vote. If that fails, the pension bill would be considered adopted. Toronto's largest zoo has temporarily closed access to its bird park. It's being extra careful after several cases of avian flu were discovered south of the city. And as we hear from CBC's Ithel Musa, these outbreaks can be damaging to other birds and animals.
Visitors flocking to the Toronto Zoo in hopes of catching a glimpse of exotic birds will have to wait. Several cases of a highly contagious strain of avian flu were confirmed in southern Ontario this week, and the zoo isn't taking any chances.
We took the proactive steps to close our aviaries to our guests to protect the birds that are in our care.
There were major outbreaks last year of the H5N1 virus around the world. In Canada, nearly 5 million domestic birds were infected, and more than 250 farms and facilities experienced outbreaks, according to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Experts say seasonal avian flu outbreaks will likely continue to happen.
That is associated with migratory birds. So it's primarily being transmitted because of migration of those birds, and that's why there's some seasonality to the behavior of this virus.
Sharif says the risk to humans is low, but this particular strain of avian flu is lethal to birds, and it's proven deadly to other animals too. 8 skunks found dead in British Columbia last month tested positive.
We suspect these skunks became infected by eating dead wild birds.
BC says it's investing $5 million in its poultry and livestock sector to help reduce and prevent disease outbreaks.
As the virus has changed, it is now a year-round challenge that we are facing. These funds will allow us to bring on full-time staff and infrastructure to be able to better respond in the future.
Chicken Farmers of Canada says the impact of avian influenza on poultry farms over the last year has been significant. So farmers are working closely with federal and provincial bodies to reduce the risk of outbreaks. Ithel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, a pilot project is providing addiction services to 3 rural Manitoba communities. We'll hear from the program's manager about how it works after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Well, a pilot project is providing addiction services to 3 rural communities that are served by Prairie Mountain Health in Western Manitoba. Mobile rapid access to addiction medicine, or RAM clinics, are being held periodically in Wesquisipic First Nation, Russell and Verdon. For more, we have reached project coordinator Tamara Kemp-Boulay. Tamara, tell me how this pilot program works.
Hi, Riley. Thanks for having us. The RAM operation clinics provide education, counseling, medications, and other supports such as withdrawal management or referrals to other specialized services for our clientele.
So how important is it that communities like these expand out of the major centres, for example, and into these more rural communities?
I can't stress the importance of this, actually. Right now, the only other clinic in our whole region is in Brandon. So for people who are wanting to utilize our services, that means transportation to Brandon, which isn't always accessible.
Who can access these types of clinics?
Anybody. We are completely open to anybody who feels the need to come in to see us.
Okay. So maybe just if you can help me break it down a bit, what exactly is a rapid access to medication clinic?
So we have a team that consists of a physician, a rehab counselor, and a nurse, as well as some admin support. So everybody has their own specialty when a client will come in to access our services. As I said earlier, we can provide the medication, the education, any counseling. We can connect them with other specialized services that may be available and be a good fit for what they're looking for.
You're mentioning that these are sort of branching off of the clinic that is in Brandon, the closest for a lot of these folks. Why these 3 locations, I guess, to start?
We did some research on where we wanted to have the locations. We wanted, because this is a pilot project, we wanted to trial 3 different types of locations to see where the need might be. It certainly also depended on where we had staffing, where we had physicians, any communities that were willing to partner with us with this. So there were a lot of different factors that indicated where we were going to go.
Now, if this is successful, is there room for expansion, say, into other communities down the road?
That is what our hope would be, yes.
How many, how often, I guess, will these teams be in these communities?
So up in our First Nation, Wesquisipic First Nation, we are there weekly, 2 days a week. And in Verdon and Russell, we alternate weeks. So we're there 2 days every second week in each community.
So Tamara, tell me how many people, how many groups had to come to the table basically all at once to help get this pilot project off the ground?
We've established some really great partnerships throughout this project. Provincial RAM Hub, Shared Health, Health Canada, Wesquisipic First Nation has been an awesome partner, as well as the communities of Verdon and Russell. We've established a partnership with Brandon University, who are going to do an evaluation for us so we can see the success of this project. And their evaluation is going to be based on hearing directly from people who are using our service.
Tamara Kemp-Boulay is the project manager for Prairie Mountain Health's mobile RAM clinic. Thank you so much for taking some time to explain this to us.
Thank you for having me.
Looks like now is the moment.
The dial on the Northern Lights is at its highest setting over Finland last night. The photographer who captured these images says it was the best display so far this year. The town where he recorded this actually bills itself as a Northern Lights tourist destination, complete with a glass igloo for viewing. From some very stunning Northern Lights to meteorologist John Sauder, who says he has a very stunning photo to show us.
Yeah, you know what? This one was sent to us from Poplarfield, Manitoba. Have a look at this. This is from yesterday morning. Tony Welsh got this shot of the sunrise, and you can just see on the roadway there in the distance a school bus. So, yeah, beautiful shot. So thanks to Tony for sending that in. Boy, temperatures really not doing well, underachieving, I would say. Normal high is now 0, and we're sitting here, sun's still up for a little while, and we're -11s and -12s in the Winnipeg region. Yeah, quite cool all across the south and out into northwestern Ontario. Northern Manitoba, a bit of a trough disturbance. It's called an inverted trough, but still delivering snow today. Lynn Lake down through Thompson and Island Lake. So Still moving it around. It's only a couple of centimeters, but there has been a lot of snow across the north. Temperatures mid-minus teens to minus 20s at the moment, and tomorrow should be a little bit better. Some minus single digits on the way. Plenty of cloud out to the east of us, and there's snow falling out of that cloud, and that's the same system that extends back up into northern Manitoba. But another 2 to maybe 4 centimeters tonight, with lows around minus 13 to minus 14. All the way down to minus 17 in Winnipeg, and still windy overnight right through the Red River Valley. Minus 18 for Steinbach for an overnight low. Minus 19 in Brandon. Just a chance of flurries in Dauphin and Swan River. And then up to the north, we still have some more accumulating snow, but the snow in the west will end. Risk of frostbite in the far north. Check out these lows, minus 27 to minus 29, even a couple of centimeters of snow in Island Lake, but that will end overnight and be a much brighter, calmer day on the way for tomorrow. Minus 8s and minus 9s for Flin Flon, The Paw, Norway House, Thompson, Lynn Lake, and a sunny minus 16 in Churchill, and much drier with snow ending in Island Lake, but a little bit cooler. And then we've got some flurries or light snow at times. Not all day, not consistent, but periods of light snow. But the thing is, the wind is going to be very strong. So in outlying areas, some snow and blowing snow, including the Red River Valley. Not so much in the White Shell because the trees kind of protect you against that blowing snow. Still a couple more centimeters of snow and still windy with gusts to 50 in northwestern Ontario.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Coming up, a Quebec woman who became a quadriplegic after breaking her neck 2 years ago has regained the use of her hands after a groundbreaking surgery. We'll show you how after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. A groundbreaking surgery at a Montreal hospital has helped a Quebec woman regain the use of her hands after a spinal cord injury. She became quadriplegic, unable to use her lower body or her hands after breaking her neck 2 years ago. CBC's Alison Northcott has more on this rare surgery from Montreal.
Right now I'm going to cut an apple.
It's a task Jeanne Carrière thought she would never be able to do again on her own.
Ready for some magic?
Simply cutting an apple is a milestone.
How do you feel for yourself when you can see yourself doing this now?
Oh, it's touching.
27-year-old Carrière is quadriplegic. She lost the use of her lower body and hands after breaking her neck in 2021.
It's a miracle that I'm alive. I'm paralyzed under the neck to the toes. Look at that.
But in recent months, Carrière has regained some independence after a life-changing surgery to bring back some of what she'd lost. As Carrière went into the operating room at Montreal's Maisonneuve-Rosemont Hospital last summer, our colleagues at Radio-Canada's science program Découverte followed along to capture it on camera. Here, two surgeons, one for each of Carrière's arms, perform a fine and minute surgery called a nerve transfer.
What we are doing is basically using these functional pathways, these nerves that are still working in the upper extremity, and transferring them to muscles that have no more electricity.
The delicate portion we do under the microscope, where we will connect one nerve to the other nerve, and that's done with very fine sutures, finer than a person's hair.
You're kind of going around the broken area to a new area.
Exactly. So we're basically bypassing the zone of injury by getting those nerves from above the level of the lesion to those nerves below the level of the lesion.
Carrière's surgery takes 9 hours. Then it takes months for the nerve fibers to grow into the muscle and for Carrière's body to adjust.
The first time that I saw my finger move, the feeling was like to see a child do his first step. It was the first step into my new life. It's a world of difference.
It's now been more than 7 months since her surgery.
Now it's unbelievable what my hands can do. I can eat by myself in the more cleaner way. I can brush my teeth, I can cook.
This is what I have so far.
Nerve transfers have become more common in recent years, says Dr. Ming Chan. But performing them on patients who are quadriplegic is newer, so there's a lot to learn.
I think at the moment it really is too early to say with certainty that you'll work on the, every patient that we operate on. Hopefully, in the next few years, you will get more definitive answers on how this is working out.
The Montreal surgeons who operated on Carrière have now done more than a dozen similar procedures.
We're completely determined and convinced that this is a life-changing surgery for them, and then knowing it allows them more independence, and not just for the short term, but for the rest of their life.
Carrière is thankful for that.
And it was very touching that everybody was working for my future.
One of the most positive changes, she said, is being able to work again, writing a screenplay. She's grateful about how far she's come in her rehabilitation.
It's all the little things that I wasn't able to do. Now that I can do it, it's like all my world is changed.
Carrière is hoping for even more improvements in the months to come. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Laychuk, Quebec.
Still ahead, meteorologist John Sauder has his 7-day forecast when we come back, and we'll have your daily lift as well. Stay with us.
Well, my grandmother Sauder, Georgina Sauder, was right from Belfast, so I better show you a St. Patrick's Day forecast for tomorrow. In the afternoon, -10, and we'll see some periods of snow and some blowing snow, and you know, that might even be a distant relative of mine. You never know. So once we get past that, we're still cool heading into the weekend. Then things start to warm up. Lots of sun on the weekend, -2 by Sunday, and by mid next week, we're heading above 0, but we could see some snow again by Thursday. A very special dream came true this weekend. A young Manitoba girl spent her Saturday chatting with her idol, Dolly Parton.
Wow. The Dream Factory makes dreams like these come true for kids who are suffering from a life-threatening illness. That's tonight's Daily Lift.
I will always love you. I will always love you.
Dream kid Fallon came here from Ukraine when she was adopted by a Manitoba family. She has end-stage kidney disease and is on dialysis daily. The 13-year-old got to spend some time over the weekend chatting with Dolly about her songwriting process, what's happening in Dollywood, and of course, got to hear her sing. The Dream Factory is based here in Manitoba, and all the funds they raise stay here to help sick kids and their families. Wow. Isn't that something?
It's something for that girl, but Dolly is such a special person.
Absolutely.
To give her time like that and do something like that, and she probably was happy to do it.
Absolutely. I imagine so. Thank you for being with us tonight. Hope you enjoy the evening tonight, and we'll be back at 11 after the National. Have a great night.
Good night.